Have you noticed? There are women who simply don't age. And no, it's not Botox, it's not privileged genetics. It's something science is reluctant to admit, but it's right under our noses. While most people are chasing miracle creams and expensive procedures, these women have discovered a disturbing secret. Time doesn't work the same for everyone. Your body is literally responding to your internal states right this very moment. The bitterness you're holding onto, it's carving wrinkles. The peace you cultivate, it's rewriting your genes. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover why some women seem immune to aging and how it has way more to do with your soul than your skin. There's something unsettling about certain women who cross our path. They carry a luminosity that defies any logic, a presence that makes time seem to negotiate different terms. It's not about expensive creams or cutting-edge procedures, though some of them might even use those things. It's something deeper, almost disturbing how obvious it becomes once you finally notice it. An energy that pulses from the inside out, transforming wrinkles into maps of wisdom instead of marks of defeat. While many people desperately search for eternal youth in clinics and miracle formulas, these women seem to have discovered a completely different secret. They're not fighting against time, they're dancing with it. Genetics explains a small part of this story, maybe 20% at most. The rest comes from territory that conventional science still hesitates to explore in depth, but that ancient cultures always knew existed. It's the life force that animates the body, not just keeps it functioning. What's most fascinating is that this timeless beauty doesn't follow any specific physical pattern. It shows up in tall and short women, thin and curvy, of all ethnicities and backgrounds. The common denominator isn't in the mirror, it's in something invisible that manifests through the gaze, the posture, the way they occupy space. When these women walk into a room, something shifts in the atmosphere. It's not arrogance, it's genuine presence. It's like they carry a different frequency, a vibration that invites others to rise up too. But here's what's really intriguing. This magnetic quality isn't the privilege of a few lucky ones born under some special star. It's a latent possibility in every woman, waiting to be awakened through a specific process of inner transformation. The path begins when someone stops fragmenting their own existence and starts a journey toward wholeness. And that journey has a name, a concept that very few people truly understand in its deepest essence, but it changes everything once you finally unlock it. Individuation is one of those terms people throw around without really understanding the revolution it represents. It's not about becoming more yourself in the superficial sense of following your preferences or expressing your personality on social media. It's about something way more radical. It's the process of integrating all the parts of who you are, including those you've hidden, denied, or didn't even know existed. When a woman truly embarks on this journey, something extraordinary happens at the cellular, energetic level, and even in how her face reflects light. Think about most people living with only half of themselves available. The conscious, that part you know control and present to the world, is just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface is the unconscious, a vast territory full of unrealized potentials, unprocessed traumas, forgotten gifts, and inconvenient truths. Most women spend an absurd amount of energy trying to keep these two parts separate, building internal walls higher and higher. And you know what happens with all that wasted energy? It manifests as chronic tension, inflammation, exhaustion, and yes, accelerated aging. When you begin the process of individuation, you're basically declaring peace in an internal war that's lasted decades. You're saying, I'm going to stop dividing myself and start unifying. Social masks start falling away not out of rebellion, but because you simply don't need them anymore to feel safe. The compulsive need for external approval drastically decreases because you're building internal approval that's solid as rock. And here's the magic. When you stop spending energy suppressing parts of yourself, That energy becomes available for regeneration, creativity, and vitality. Women who've completed significant layers of this process carry an authenticity that's impossible to fake. They don't need to convince anyone of anything. They're not selling an image. There's no dissonance between what they feel inside and what they show outside. This internal coherence creates a kind of magnetic field around them. People feel strangely safe and inspired in their presence. But there's a specific component to this journey that most people fear to face. A shadowy territory that holds precisely the greatest treasures of transformation. Humanity invented the clock and then became its slave. Chronos is linear, quantifiable time, the one you measure in hours, days, and years, the time that schedules meetings, deadlines, and birthdays. It's the time of productivity, anxiety, the race against something that never stops. Most people live completely imprisoned in this timeline, feeling every second slip through their fingers like sand. And the body responds to this constant pressure exactly as you'd expect. It ages faster, wears down, accumulates the tension of someone who's always late for somewhere. But there's another kind of time, one that ancient cultures knew intimately and that modernity has almost completely forgotten. Kairos is sacred time, the opportune moment, that eternal instant where everything aligns perfectly. It's the time you experience when you're completely absorbed in a meaningful activity and suddenly realize 3 hours passed like 15 minutes. It's the time of artists, lovers, mothers cradling their babies, mystics in meditation. In this time, you're not rushing. You're fully inhabiting each moment without needing it to be different from what it is. Here's what few people realize. Your body responds completely differently depending on which time you're living in. When you're in pure Chronos, immersed in constant urgency, your cortisol levels stay elevated, your breathing gets shallow, your muscles never fully relax. It's a chronic survival state that literally accelerates all aging processes. On the other hand, when you manage to access Kairos regularly, something shifts in your biochemistry. Hormone production balances out, inflammation decreases, even your gene expression starts to change. Women who master the art of moving between these two times develop a temporal flexibility that reflects in their faces and bodies. They can be efficient and productive when necessary, but they also know how to dive into moments of deep presence where time literally stops having power over them. It's not about denying commitments or living in some timeless fantasy. It's about not being constantly tensed by the tyranny of the clock. And this ability to navigate between worlds is intimately connected with the courage to look within and face what most people prefer to keep locked in the depths. Everyone has a shadow, but almost no one wants to admit it. We're not talking about something mystical or supernatural. The shadow is simply the sum of all the parts of you that have been rejected, repressed, or considered unacceptable throughout life. That anger you could never express because proper ladies don't do that. That voracious ambition you hid because women shouldn't be so ambitious. That sensual side you locked away because someone said it was inappropriate. All of this goes into the shadow, but it doesn't disappear. It stays down there, consuming your vital energy and eventually manifesting in distorted ways. Most people treat the shadow as an enemy to be fought, something shameful that needs to stay hidden at all costs. They spend decades building an impeccable persona, a carefully edited image of who they should be. But here's the problem. The more energy you use to keep the shadow suppressed, the less energy you have left to truly live. It's like holding a beach ball underwater. You can do it, but it takes constant effort, and at any moment it can escape and explode on the surface in unpredictable ways. This chronic suppression effort leaves visible marks, jaw tension, worry lines on the forehead, eyes without sparkle. Now imagine what happens when a woman finally stops fighting against her shadow and decides to integrate it. We're not talking about acting impulsively or becoming an unethical person. Integration isn't about letting the shadow take control. It's about recognizing, accepting, and transforming these rejected parts into conscious allies. When you reclaim your anger, it transforms into strength to set healthy boundaries. When you embrace your ambition, it becomes fuel to realize your deepest purposes. When you free your repressed sensuality, it becomes a source of vitality that literally rejuvenates your body. Women who've done this integration work carry a completely different energetic density. They're not perfect, nor do they pretend to be. They're whole. You can feel that all parts of them are present and in dialogue with each other. There's no unsettling sense that something is being hidden or performed. And the body responds to this integration in surprising ways. Facial muscles relax, skin seems more luminous, eyes recover a depth that had disappeared. But this integration journey inevitably passes through territory that our modern culture tries to avoid at all costs. And precisely because of this, it misses the most powerful elixir of transformation. Nobody wants to hear this, but it needs to be said. Suffering is inevitable, but what you do with it determines who you become. There are women who go through devastating losses, deep betrayals, monumental disappointments, and emerge from these processes with a luminosity that didn't exist before. And there are others who go through much smaller difficulties and accumulate every drop of bitterness as if they were collecting victimization trophies. The difference isn't in the amount of pain experienced. It's in the capacity to metabolize that suffering into wisdom instead of letting it rot into resentment. Think of suffering as raw material. It arrives in your life without asking permission, bringing its lessons wrapped in chaos and confusion. You can look at this raw material and ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? What part of me needs to die so something new can be born? What illusion is being shattered so I can see the truth? Or you can simply cling to the narrative of injustice, mentally replaying the story of your pain until it becomes your main identity. The first choice transforms lead into alchemical gold. The second transforms you into a living monument to your own tragedy. What happens physically when you convert suffering into wisdom is almost magical. Consciously processed pain releases tremendous energy that was trapped in patterns of defense and protection. Muscles you didn't even know were tense finally relax. Emotions frozen in the body start circulating again. There's even a different quality in the gaze of someone who's done this work. It's a gaze that went through fire and wasn't destroyed, that knows darkness but chose light. On the other hand, unmetabolized bitterness literally settles into tissues, disillusionment lines around the mouth, hardness in expression, a kind of opacity that takes over the presence. Radiant women aren't those who avoided suffering, they're those who used it as fuel for inner alchemy. They understand that every crisis carries seeds of transformation, that every loss opens space for something new to be born, that every disappointment removes layers of falseness, revealing essential truth. It's not about romanticizing pain or actively seeking suffering. It's about not wasting the lessons when they inevitably arrive. But this capacity for conscious transformation requires something most people never develop: an internal observer capable of witnessing their own experience without getting completely lost in it. There's a part of you that never ages, never gets sick, never dies. And most people spend their entire lives without realizing it exists. It's that silent awareness that's always present, watching your thoughts without being the thoughts, witnessing your emotions without being the emotions, perceiving your body without being the body. When you were a child, this witness was there. When you're 80 years old, it'll still be exactly the same. It's the deepest I that exists behind all the temporary identities you wear and remove throughout life. The vast majority of people are completely identified with the content of experience. I am my thoughts. I am my emotions. I am this body that's aging. When you're fused with these identifications, aging becomes terrifying. After all, if you are the body, then every wrinkle is an existential threat. Every gray hair is evidence of death approaching. every physical change confirms you're gradually disappearing. This anxiety about time accelerates precisely what you fear most. The body responds to chronic tension by aging faster. But when you develop the capacity to inhabit the observer, something extraordinary happens. You continue caring for the body, but you're no longer desperately attached to it as the only source of identity and value. You realize, oh, there's an awareness here that's watching this body age, but that awareness itself doesn't age. It's a paradoxical kind of freedom. You care less about aging and, ironically, age better. Anxiety dramatically decreases, and with it, the entire cascade of stress hormones that accelerate cellular wear. Developing this internal observer isn't a matter of elaborate technique or years of meditation in Tibetan caves. It's about creating micro moments throughout the day where you simply notice. I'm thinking instead of being lost in thoughts. I'm feeling anxiety instead of being the anxiety. I'm experiencing this body instead of just being the body. Women who cultivate this internal witness carry a serenity that defies explanation. They're simultaneously engaged with life and detached from the drama. And this quality of conscious presence has powerful allies in modern science, discoveries that validate what mystics have always known about the connection between internal states and physical manifestation. For decades, science told us genetics was destiny. You were born with a set of genes, and that was it. Your fate was sealed. Predisposition to certain diseases, life expectancy, even how you'd age. But then epigenetics came along and turned this understanding upside down. It was discovered that your genes are more like a piano with 88 keys. You inherited the instrument, but who decides what music to play are your habits, thoughts, emotions, and environment. Two people with identical genetics can age in radically different ways, depending on how they live their inner lives. Telomeres are especially fascinating in this story. They're like those plastic caps on the tips of shoelaces, protecting the ends of your chromosomes. Every time a cell divides, telomeres shorten a little. It's literally a biological clock of cellular age. When they get too short, the cell stops dividing and you age. Now comes the revolutionary part. Studies show that chronic stress, depression, and social isolation drastically accelerate telomere shortening. Meanwhile, states of genuine joy, sense of purpose, and deep social connection don't just slow this process down. In some cases, they can even lengthen telomeres that had already shortened. Think about the implication of this for a second. It means that woman who cultivates inner peace, who found her purpose, who lives in frequent states of gratitude and genuine connection, is literally rewriting her age markers at the cellular level. She's not just feeling younger. She's biologically younger than someone the same chronological age living in silent despair. Gene expression changes, systemic inflammation decreases, cellular repair processes optimize. It's as if the body receives a clear message. Everything's okay, we're safe, we can invest in regeneration instead of just survival. And it doesn't stop there. Research in neuroplasticity shows that contemplative practices, flow states, and transcendent experiences literally change brain structure. Areas associated with well-being expand, anxiety circuits decrease, neurotransmitter production balances out. Women who understand this aren't just thinking positive. They're consciously orchestrating their biochemistry through the quality of their internal states. But there's an aspect of this journey that goes beyond maintenance and enters even deeper territory. The need to allow old versions of ourselves to die so new ones can emerge. Nature shows us this principle everywhere, but we humans are experts at resisting it. Trees drop their leaves in autumn without lamenting. Caterpillars completely dissolve in the chrysalis to become butterflies. The moon goes through phases of death and rebirth every month. Everything in life obeys cycles of birth, growth, decline, death, and renewal, except us, who desperately cling to identities that expired years ago. That version of you that worked perfectly at 20 might be suffocating who you need to be at 40, but you keep forcing old patterns on new realities. There are women struggling to maintain an image of carefree youth when life is asking her to become the wise elder. There are others refusing to release the role of primary mother when the kids have already left home, creating existential vacuums because they don't know who they are without that identity. There are those stuck in dead relationships, careers that no longer make sense, versions of themselves that have already fulfilled their purpose. And all this attachment to what should have already been released creates an internal rigidity that manifests as external rigidity in the body, face, energy. It's like trying to force water not to flow. It'll create pressure and stagnation at all levels. The true art is in recognizing when something needs to die and having the courage to allow that death consciously. We're not talking about giving up on things easily or abandoning responsibilities. We're talking about perceiving when a phase is complete and needs to be honored with a dignified closure, releasing the identity of young person on the rise to embrace woman in her power, letting the role of the one who always takes care of everyone die to allow others to grow too, freeing the need for external approval that defined you for decades. Each conscious death opens space for an authentic rebirth, and this cycle keeps your vital energy flowing instead of stagnant. Women who master this art aren't afraid of metamorphoses. They recognize the signs that something is asking to die, that feeling of tightness, excessive wear, forcing something that no longer flows. And instead of ignoring those signs and continuing to insist, they create rites of passage, allow the mourning of what's being released, and open themselves curiously to what wants to emerge. This existential flexibility translates into physical, mental, and emotional flexibility. And when you're flowing with natural cycles instead of resisting them, you start noticing surprising patterns revealing themselves in your life, meaningful coincidences that seem to conspire in your favor in ways linear logic can't explain. Synchronicity is that weird phenomenon everyone's experienced, but few truly understand. You think about someone you haven't seen in years, and that person calls you the same day. You desperately need an answer, and open a book to a random page that contains exactly what you needed to hear. You're in a deep dilemma, and a casual conversation with a stranger in an elevator brings the clarity you were missing. Conventional science calls this coincidence and moves on. But Jung perceived something much deeper happening. These were moments where linear time bent and meaning replaced causality as the organizing principle of reality. When you're completely stuck in Chronos time, living only on the surface of ordinary consciousness, synchronicities are rare or go unnoticed. You're so busy running from task to task, so identified with your linear concerns, that you don't notice the more subtle patterns weaving around your life. But women who've developed that internal observer, who move between different states of consciousness, who've done the work of individuation, these start living in territory where synchronicities become almost common. It's as if they're operating partially on another frequency, where the invisible connections between all things become more visible. What's fascinating is that living in a state of synchronicity changes your relationship with control and obsessive planning. You continue making plans and taking actions, but there's an underlying trust that there's a greater intelligence orchestrating things. When you release the neurotic need to control every detail, when you trust the signs and mysterious timings of life, the body relaxes at a deep level. That chronic tension of, I have to make everything happen by myself, dissolves. And in that relaxation, natural processes of healing and regeneration that were blocked by hypervigilance finally get to operate. There are women who've developed such refined sensitivity to these synchronicities that they navigate life in an almost magical way. They're not passive, they're active and receptive simultaneously. They take inspired actions and then observe how the universe responds, adjusting course as signs appear. They live in constant dialogue with something greater than themselves, and this removes that sense of existential isolation that weighs so heavily on body and soul. It's not empty mysticism. It's a radically different way of being in the world where you recognize that your body isn't just a material object destined for deterioration, but something much more sacred and mysterious. The expression body as temple became a gym and supplement ad cliche, but the original meaning was completely distorted. It's not about transforming your body into an aesthetically perfect object to display on social media. It's about recognizing that your physical body is literally the temple where your consciousness dwells in this existence. And temples require reverence, not vanity. When you treat your body as an object to be judged, criticized, and forced to external standards, you're desecrating the sacred. When you honor it as the precious vehicle through which you experience life, everything changes in how you relate to it. Practical reverence isn't about complicated rituals or performative spirituality. It's about bringing full awareness to the simplest things. When you eat, are you truly present with the food, or are you distracted browsing your phone? When you move, are you inhabiting your body or just dragging it from one place to another like annoying baggage? When you rest, do you allow genuine relaxation, or do you feel guilty for not being productive? Women who cultivate this reverence develop a deep intimacy with their own bodies. They notice subtle signs long before they become screams. They respond to real needs instead of ignoring them until collapse. Here's something very few people understand. Your body has its own intelligence that transcends rational mind. It knows how to heal wounds, how to balance hormones, how to regenerate cells. All of this happening constantly without you needing to think about it. But this innate intelligence works better when you get out of the way and stop interfering with chronic stress, constant criticism, and systematic neglect. When you start treating your body as a sacred ally instead of an enemy to be tamed, it responds in surprising ways. Inflammations that were chronic start decreasing. Pains you thought were permanent soften. Energy that was stagnant starts circulating again. Take the simple practice of placing your hands over your heart every morning and thanking your body for another day of life. No matter how it looks, how many wrinkles it has, how much weight it carries, or the act of looking in the mirror and speaking with reverence. This body brought me here, crossed storms, carried joys, held memories. It seems silly until you do it consistently and notice real changes in your posture, facial expression, the way you move through the world. Women who've incorporated this practical reverence radiate a deep self-acceptance that's magnetic, not because they've achieved some aesthetic ideal, but because they've finally made peace with the sacred vehicle that transports them through this mysterious existence. So we've reached the end of this journey, and now you carry knowledge that most people will never have access to, not because it's secret, but because it takes courage to look within instead of seeking magical solutions out there. You've understood that timeless beauty doesn't come from expensive bottles. It comes from deep integration between who you are inside and what you manifest outside. Now, I want to ask you an honest question, one of those that makes you uncomfortable. What kind of time are you living in? Do you spend your days chasing the clock hand, feeling every second escape with anxiety? Or can you access those sacred moments where time stops and you simply fully inhabit life? Pay attention over the next few days. Notice how many times you're truly present versus how many times you're just surviving on autopilot. And here's a simple exercise that can change everything if you do it seriously. Tonight, before sleeping, sit somewhere quiet and close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths and then ask this question out loud or mentally. What part of me have I been rejecting that most needs to be seen and integrated? Don't force an answer. Just ask the question and stay in receptive silence for 5 minutes. It might be an image, a memory, a sensation in the body, or simply a word. Write down whatever comes without judgment. This is the first step of active imagination. You're initiating a dialogue with your shadow instead of continuing to run from it. Do this for 7 nights in a row, always with the same question or variations of it. What do you want me to know? How can I integrate you in a healthy way? What gift are you holding for me? You'll be surprised by the answers that emerge when you finally stop suppressing and start listening. Remember, integration isn't about acting impulsively. It's about bringing awareness to what was unconscious. If this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's a lot more deep content coming about inner transformation, consciousness development, and how it manifests in your practical life. This is the kind of knowledge that doesn't age, that doesn't become obsolete, that stays relevant no matter how many years pass. And look, since you made it this far, there's another video showing up on your screen now that'll perfectly complement everything we talked about today. It's totally worth continuing this journey. See you there.